Most people think finding out your husband is cheating is a loud event, shattering glass, screaming matches. But for me, it was silent. It was the sound of a notification chiming on a marble table. I was sitting in the living room of our West Village apartment. It is a beautiful space, high ceilings, white walls, minimalist, too perfect, honestly, just like our life. The light was coming in through the floor to ceiling windows. It was hitting the coffee table. The composition was perfect, golden hour, but I felt cold. Theron was in the shower. I could hear the water beating against the tile. He was humming some pop song from 2005. He always sounds terrible. He thinks he has a great voice. His iPad was lying on the marble table, screen black, reflecting the ceiling. Then it flashed. A notification bubble popped up. That familiar white square with black text. It was 10:43 a.m. on a Tuesday. He was supposed to be in a boardroom, but the iPad was here, and the message, that was the problem. The preview showed a text from C, just the letter C. No name, no photo. It said, "Can't wait for Napa. Did you tell her?" I stared at the screen. Napa. We hadn't been to Napa in 3 years. And next month, he told me he had that fintech conference in Chicago. You know that feeling where the floor drops out? It's not a metaphor. My stomach actually lurched. I felt nauseous. The room started to spin. I looked at the timestamp, 10:43 a.m. I picked up my own phone, checked my calendar. Chicago conference, October 15th. He had booked the flights. He showed me the itinerary. Unless the itinerary was a prop. A prop in a play I didn't know I was acting in. I looked around the room, the expensive furniture, the art we bought together. Was any of it real? Or was it just a set design? The shower water stopped. Silence. For 10 seconds, I just heard the clock ticking. Then I heard the curtain slide open, metal rings on a rod. I sat there frozen. My coffee was on the table, steam rising from the mug. I grabbed it to warm my hands. They were ice cold. I am an art director. I pay attention to details. It is my job. And suddenly, all the details were screaming at me. Who is C? Is it Callista? The junior account exec from his holiday party? The one who laughed too loud at his jokes? I looked at the iPad again. The screen was dimming. I had seconds to decide. Do I confront him? Do I smash the tablet? No. That is impulsive. Bad composition. You do not fix a masterpiece by tearing the canvas. You fix it by painting over it. I reached for my phone with shaking hands. I opened the camera. I lined up the shot, the iPad screen, the text, the timestamp. Click. I swiped the notification left. Gone. The screen went black again. Just a reflection of me. Looking back at myself, I want to ask you guys something. If you saw that text, would you say something? Or would you wait? Because I knew waiting was the dangerous choice. I heard him step out of the bathroom, bare feet on the hardwood floor. Thud. Thud. He was coming this way. I put my phone down. I picked up my coffee. I took a sip. It tasted bitter. Burned. He walked into the living room. Wet hair, a towel around his waist. He looked so normal. He looked like my husband. He smiled at me. "Hey, babe, you're up early." He didn't know. He had no idea the lens had shifted. I looked at him, really looked at him, the mole on his shoulder. The way he stands, I think nothing, just a cold, sharp resolve. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I took a photo of the screen, turned off the iPad, and waited for the water to stop running. The war started in that silence. "Hey, babe, you're up early." Those words hit me like a physical blow to the chest. I froze. My hand tightened around the warm mug. The iPad was screen down on the marble counter. He couldn't see what I had just read. He couldn't see the message about Napa. I had to act fast. I put on my mask, the one I wore for difficult client presentations. The one that said, "I trust you completely." I looked up. I smiled. Yeah, I couldn't sleep, just brewing some coffee. The bathroom door creaked open. Steam rolled out into our bedroom. He walked out with a white towel wrapped around his waist. He smelled like sandalwood and deceit. For a second, I saw 2016. We were standing on a lawn in the Hamptons. I was in that white lace gown. He looked at me then like I was his entire world. He whispered, "You are my masterpiece." Back then, I believed him. I thought I was his art. Turns out I was just his canvas. And he had painted over me a long time ago. He grabbed his shirt from the bed. Crazy day ahead. The auditors are coming next week. I watched him button his cuffs. His movements were so precise, so calm. I'm nervous, he admitted. I need to find some old files. He kept talking, pulling on his trousers. I've got to digitize all the paper records from the basement just to be safe. He frowned at me. You know how chaotic those archives are. It's a mess down there. Did he feel guilty? No, he felt stressed about getting caught in a financial audit. He had no idea he was already caught in a moral one. Have you ever listened to someone lie to your face and wondered if they actually believe their own lies? It's fascinating to watch. He walked over to me. The floorboards creaked under his weight. He leaned in. I wanted to recoil. Instead, I leaned forward. I adjusted the angle of my head. I just adjusted the lighting. I let him kiss me. His lips were soft. That was the worst part. My stomach churned. I tasted bile in the back of my throat. But I didn't pull away. He pulled back, smiling. You're the best, XO, seriously. He touched my cheek. I don't know what I'd do without you. Oh, Theron, you have no idea. I want you to ask yourself something right now. Could you kiss the person who betrayed you without flinching? It takes a level of acting I didn't know I possessed. He grabbed his briefcase. The leather handle looked worn and familiar. Dinner tonight? I'll try to be home by 8. I nodded. Sounds perfect. He walked out of the bedroom. His footsteps echoed on the hardwood floor. Then the front door opened and clicked shut. The silence returned. It was heavy. It was loud. As the door clicked shut, I wasn't his wife anymore. I was his project manager, and his project was slated for demolition. The deadbolt clicked. The front door slammed shut. He was finally gone. The silence rushed back into the apartment, heavy and suffocating. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, staring at the marble island. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It was steady, slow. I walked over to the counter. The iPad was still there, screen down. I flipped it over. The glass was cold against my fingertips. The text was still glowing. Can't wait for Napa. Did you tell her? I pulled my phone from my pocket. I opened the camera app. I framed the shot perfectly. Focus locked. Snapshot taken. I saved the photo to a hidden folder named Composition. Then I placed the iPad back exactly how I found it. 1 millimeter to the left, then 1 millimeter back. Perfect. The scene was undisturbed. If you've ever had to hide your true feelings in your own home, you know the drill. You smile until your face hurts. Then you plot in the dark. I grabbed my trench coat from the hook. I needed to get out. The air in the apartment felt toxic, like breathing in varnish fumes. I walked out into the crisp October air. I hailed a cab to Tribeca. I needed a crowd. I needed noise. I needed to be invisible. 40 minutes later, I was sitting at a corner table at the Smile. The smell of roasted beans and old pastries filled the room. It was chaotic. Loud. The opposite of my life in Soho. I ordered an iced oat milk latte. The condensation dripped down the side of the cup. I pulled my laptop out of my bag. I flipped it open. The screen reflected my face. Calm, cold, calculated. I logged into her joint bank account. I stared at the numbers. 200,000 in liquid cash. It was beautiful, but it was all exposed. If Theron got wind of my plan, he could freeze it in seconds. I needed to secure the asset allocation. I opened a private browser window. I navigated to a business banking portal, XV Private Holdings, a new entity, a new account. I typed in my social security number, my address, my birth date. The cursor blinked at me, waiting. It felt like signing a death warrant for our marriage. The woman at the next table laughed loudly. The sound pierced my focus. I looked at her. She was happy. Ignorant. I turned back to my screen. And honestly, I want to know what you would have done. Do you drain the account? Do you take it all? That's too loud. That's messy art. I prefer subtle brushstrokes. I went back to the joint account. The transfer page. I stared at the amount field. I typed in 5,000. $5,000. Just enough to start. Just enough to hurt him a little. I hit confirm. The screen spun for a second, loading, processing. Then the notification popped up. Transfer complete. I watched the money leave our shared life and enter my private war chest. My hands didn't shake, not even a little bit. It felt right. like balancing a color palette that was slightly off. Theron always called me his masterpiece, but the composition was wrong. I just adjusted the lighting. I took a sip of my coffee. It was lukewarm now. I looked around the cafe. A couple was laughing by the window. A man was typing furiously on his phone. Nobody here knew what I had just done. I was a ghost in plain sight. I closed my laptop. The click was final. I checked my phone again. The money was there. Safe. Hidden. Mine. I leaned back against the brick wall. $5,000 down, $495,000 to go, but money is just paint. You need a brush to make the picture. I needed a general for this war. I walked out of the smile. The wind off the Hudson cut right through my trench coat. My new account was open, $200,000. It was a start. But you know that feeling when you have a weapon but no ammunition? That was me. I had the cash, but I needed a strategy. I needed a shark. I hailed a cab on Broadway. The traffic was brutal. The car smelled like pine air freshener and stale cigarettes. It gave me time to think. I stared at the back of the driver's head. I thought about Theron in the basement. He was shredding files. He was scared. Good. Fear makes people sloppy. I just adjusted the lighting. It was time to see everything clearly. We pulled up to a glass tower on 57th Street. I paid the driver. This was Midtown. The air smelled like exhaust and ambition. I stepped onto the curb. My heels clicked on the pavement. The rhythm sounded like a countdown. I took the elevator to the 44th floor. The walls were mirrored. I watched myself in the reflection. My face was calm, calculated. The composition was perfect. I walked into Kingsley & Associates. It was quiet. Too quiet. The receptionist was a statue. She pointed to a heavy mahogany door at the end of the hall. I walked toward it. The carpet was so thick my shoes sank in. Langston Kingsley didn't stand up. He just looked at me. He was older, silver hair, a tie that cost more than my first car. His office was huge. A wall of windows looked down on Central Park. It was a view for a king. I sat in the leather chair. It was cold. I need a divorce, I said. My voice didn't shake. And I think my husband is stealing from his company? Langston raised an eyebrow. Interesting, he said. Show me. I pulled out my phone. I opened the gallery. There was the photo, the text message. Can't wait for Napa. I slid the phone across the desk. He read it. He didn't look surprised. He says he's in Chicago, I said. And this? I pulled up the bank transfer. I moved $200,000 today from our joint account before he could hide it. Langston looked at the transfer. He nodded. Smart, he said, but not enough. He leaned forward. His eyes were sharp. Is it fraud, embezzlement? He's hoarding cash, I said. There's an audit coming next week. He's in the basement destroying paper records right now. Langston smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Okay, he said. Now we have leverage. He opened a drawer. He took out a retainer agreement. It was thick, bound in blue leather. He slid it to me. The fee is $50,000, he said. Retainer. I looked at the number. It was steep. But I had the cash. I signed the paper. Exiomara. The pen scratched the page. It sounded like a knife on a plate. He took the agreement. He locked it in a safe. Now listen to me, he said. Do not tip your hand. Do not ask him about Napa. Do not mention the money. But I know, I said. Exactly, he said. You act, you smile, you make him think he is winning. He adjusted his cufflinks. We need to catch him in the act. We need the full picture. I felt a coldness in my chest. It was fear. Or maybe it was excitement. I couldn't tell. Have you ever had to lie to someone's face? Like, really lie? While looking them in the eye. Let me know in the comments if you could do this. Because I wasn't sure I could. I stood up to leave. The meeting was over. I walked to the door. One more thing, he said. I turned around. He told me to keep a diary. Every lie, every late night, every suspicious expense. So I bought a leather-bound journal and started writing the history of his demise. Theron walked into the kitchen around noon. He looked like he owned the world. I was standing by the marble island, gripping the countertop. My lawyer told me to act normal. So I smiled. It felt like stretching a rubber band until it snaps. Hey, babe, he said. He didn't even look at me. He was too busy checking his watch. Big meeting with the auditors today. I nodded. I kept my face neutral. A perfect mask of indifference. He leaned in and kissed my cheek. His lips were dry. The touch made my skin crawl. I didn't pull away. I stood there and let him mark me with his lie. Good luck, I said. My voice didn't shake. He grabbed his briefcase and turned toward the door. Don't wait up, he called out. Then the front door clicked shut. The silence rushed back in. Heavy, suffocating, but I wasn't alone anymore. I had work to do. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small box. Inside was a matte black speaker. Or at least, that's what it looked like. It was a high-definition camera. I walked into his home office. The blinds were drawn tight. The room smelled like old paper and his cologne. I placed the speaker on the top shelf, right behind his head. The lens was invisible inside the mesh grill. I plugged it in. A tiny red light flashed once, then went dark. The composition was perfect. He would never know he was being watched. Next was the car. I took the elevator down to the garage. The air was cold and smelled of gasoline. His Porsche sat in the corner like a black beast. I knelt on the concrete. The dust coated my knees. I pulled a magnetic tracker from my pocket. It was the size of a matchbook. I reached under the rear bumper. My fingers brushed the cold metal. I snapped the tracker into place. Hidden in the shadows. You ever played a video game where you controlled a character? That's what this felt like. Pure adrenaline-fueled control. I went back upstairs and sat on the sofa. I opened the tracking app on my phone. A blue dot appeared on the map. Theron. He was moving up the West Side Highway. I watched him turn onto 57th Street. It was mesmerizing. I wasn't just his wife anymore. I was his shadow. Have you ever felt that rush? Knowing someone's secrets before they do? It's intoxicating. Hours passed. I was at my desk at the agency. My phone buzzed. Motion detected. I tapped the notification. The live feed filled my screen. Greeny night vision. Theron was sitting in his leather chair, feet up on the desk. He was on the phone. He was laughing. Then he leaned forward. The audio cut through my headphones. She doesn't suspect a thing, he whispered. My blood turned to ice. Did I feel guilty? No. I felt hungry. I wanted to burn his world down. But first I needed to secure access. I remembered the spare key, the one he kept in the fake rock by the hydrangeas. I left work early. I stopped at a hardware store on Broadway. I made a duplicate of the house key. I went home and slipped the original back into the flower pot. Now I had a key he didn't know about. A back door into his life. The sun was starting to set. I checked the tracker one last time. The blue dot had stopped moving. It was 2 p.m. The location wasn't his office. It was a residential building on the Upper East Side. I zoomed in on the map. The dot was sitting there, waiting. I wasn't just his wife anymore. I was his warden, and I knew exactly where my prisoner was going at 2 p.m. The blue dot on my screen was moving. It wasn't heading toward the office building. It was heading south, downtown. I grabbed my keys. I grabbed my heavy trench coat. I ran down to the garage stairs. My heels clicked loudly on the concrete. The air smelled of cold exhaust and old tires. I jumped into my car. The engine roared to life. I checked the tracker again. He was moving fast. I merged onto the West Side Highway. The Hudson River was a black void on my left. I stayed 3 cars back. It's a rule in surveillance. Never crowd your subject. I watched his brake lights flare red. He took the exit for SoHo. Then he turned toward the Lower East Side. We ended up on Ludlow Street. He pulled up to the Ludlow Hotel. You know the place. Chic, red brick, very downtown. The valet rushed to open his door. Theron stepped out like he owned the sidewalk. I double parked behind a delivery truck. My engine was idling. The vibration of the car hummed against my back. I reached for my bag. I pulled out my Nikon DF Fit. I attached the telephoto lens. My hands were shaking. I took a deep breath to steady them. I waited. The sun was setting behind the tenement buildings. Long shadows stretched across the street. Then the lobby doors opened. Theron was there, but he wasn't alone. Callista stepped out next to him. She looked so young. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen, but it was her neck that caught my eye. Wrapped around it was that scarf, the gray cashmere Hermes. Theron told me he lost that scarf skiing in Aspen 2 years ago. He said he was devastated. It was a lie. It was right there, touching her skin. They stopped on the sidewalk. He turned to her. He smiled. A real smile, one I haven't seen in years. He reached out and took her hand, their fingers interlaced. You know that feeling where you want to scream, but you can't make a sound? That was me in that car. I lifted the camera to my eye. I looked through the viewfinder. The focus locked on their hands. Click. I captured the moment perfectly. High definition. Unmistakable. They looked like a piece of art I wanted to burn. The composition was all wrong. The husband and the mistress lit by the street lamps. I felt cold. But then, I felt the rage start to burn. Tell me in the comments, could you have sat there and watched? Because what I saw next broke something inside me. They walked back into the hotel together. Gone. Just like that. I lowered the camera. He didn't lose the scarf. He gifted it, just like he gifted her our savings. I needed to move faster. I sat in the driver's seat of my G-Wagon. The engine was idling low on Ludlow Street. Rain streaked the windshield. I looked at the Nikon DF50 on the passenger seat. The lens cap was off. I picked up the camera. My thumb pressed the playback button. The screen lit up the dark cabin. There they were, Theron and Callista, holding hands. The focus was sharp. The lighting was perfect. I popped the SD card out, slid it into my iPad. The image synced to my private cloud server. Encrypted, hidden. Then I formatted the card. Evidence secured. I merged onto the West Side Highway. The skyline was a blur of gray and gold. I felt cold, not from the air conditioning, but from the ice in my veins. Have you ever had to pretend everything is fine when your life is actually burning down? I turned up the radio, some classical station. It felt appropriate for a funeral. I pulled into the garage under our building. The elevator ride took forever. I walked into our apartment. It was silent. The dining room table was set. White linen, crystal glasses, 2 tapered candles in silver holders. The walls were a deep matte gray. The artwork was minimal, just like he liked it. I went into the kitchen. The roast was resting on the counter. It smelled of rosemary and thyme. I plated the food, sliced the meat, arranged the carrots like a composition. It looked beautiful. For a second, I was back in 2014, a gallery opening in Chelsea. The air smelled of expensive perfume and oil paint. Theron was standing in front of a large abstract canvas. He was wearing that navy blazer, the one I bought him. He held a glass of Pinot Noir. He turned to me and smiled. You see the mess, he said. I see the order. He reached out and tapped a strand of hair behind my ear. We make sense, Ishio. He believed it. God, he was so convincing. Then the front door clicked open. The sound echoed down the hall. My trigger. Theron walked in. He loosened his tie. He looked tired. He looked like a man who had spent the afternoon with his mistress. He dropped his keys in the bowl. Clang. Sorry I'm late, he said. He didn't even look at me. The audit team is a nightmare. I walked out of the kitchen. I was holding a bottle of Cabernet. It's okay, I said. My voice was soft. I made dinner. We sat down at the table. The candles flickered between us. I poured the wine. Deep red liquid filling the glass. I watched him take a sip. He didn't know I had been watching him all day. He didn't know I had the photo. I ran into Callista today, I said. I cut a piece of my roast. I didn't look at him. I was testing the frame. Theron froze. His fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Just for a second, then he recovered. Oh, he said. Where? Near the smile, I said. She was buying coffee. She looked glowing. Theron took a bite of his food. He chewed slowly. He swallowed. He swallowed. She's doing well, he said. We're thinking of making her lead on the Napa project. The lie was so smooth. It was effortless. He looked at me with those practiced, sympathetic eyes. It's tough for the junior staff, you know. They worked so hard. I want to know what you think. Tell me in the comments. Would you have stayed that calm? Or would you have thrown the wine in his face right then? Because I am still asking myself that question. I looked at my husband. He was eating the meal I prepared. He was lying about the woman I saw him with. He thought he was so smart. He thought I was just the wife, the decoration. And then I realized something terrifying. He wasn't just lying to cover his tracks. He was enjoying it. The thrill of the double life. It turned him on. I took a sip of my wine. It tasted bitter. Or maybe that was just my soul. I watched him wipe his mouth with the napkin. The linen was white, pristine, just like his record. For now. He looked at me with those puppy dog eyes, and I realized he thought he was winning. That was his biggest mistake. I heard the garage door close at 7. Theron was off to the club. He thought he was safe on the green. He doesn't know that an empty house is the perfect crime scene. I poured a second cup of coffee, black, bitter. Then I walked into his office. The room smells like cedar and expensive cologne. He told me he was digitizing the basement files. He said they were messy. I sat down in his leather chair. The computer was locked. But the shredder, it was warm to the touch. If you've ever seen a full shredder basket, you know it looks like confetti. But this wasn't a party. This was evidence. I pulled the heavy plastic bin out. I dumped the contents onto the hardwood floor. It was a mountain of white strips. He didn't digitize anything. He just fed the paper into the machine. My knees hit the Persian rug. The floor was hard against my bones. I started sorting the pieces. White thermal paper. Black ink. I needed tape. I ran to the kitchen drawer. I came back with the roll of Scotch tape. I sat back down. Have you ever tried to put a shredded document back together? It is maddening. It is tedious. But I found a rhythm. One strip at a time. Piece by piece, the words started to emerge. I saw a logo. A red box. Cartier. My heart rate didn't spike. I didn't cry. I just kept taping. I found a date. February 14th. Do you remember where I told you he was on Valentine's Day? He texted me at 6 a.m. Stuck at the office. Big deadline, don't wait up. I ate cold takeout on the couch while watching Netflix. But this receipt told a different story. Item, 18K white gold love necklace with diamonds. Total $15,230.50. He wasn't at the office. He was on Fifth Avenue buying diamonds. I looked at the reconstructed paper in my hands. He tried to destroy the proof. But the composition was wrong. He left the jagged edges. He left the gaps. I pieced them together. I filled in the blanks. I reached deeper into the pile. There were more receipts. The SoHo Hotel. Room service for 2. Champagne. Dates that matched his Chicago business trips. He thinks shredding paper makes the truth disappear. That is the problem with arrogant men. They underestimate the cleanup. They think the mess is gone if they can't see it. I spent 3 hours on that floor. My back ached. My fingers were sticky from the tape. But by noon, I had a stack of reconstructed confessions. I stood up. My knees popped. I walked over to my safe in the closet. I took out a clear plastic sleeve. I slid the Cartier receipt inside. I labeled it Exhibit A, Valentine's Day. I put it in the leather-bound journal. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't you confront him right then? Because a war isn't won with one battle. I needed to know the full extent of the damage. Now I have the paper trail. I put the journal back in the safe. I heard his car pulling into the driveway. I walked back to the kitchen to start lunch. I looked at the clock. He would walk through the door in 2 minutes. I washed the ink off my hands. I smiled at the empty room. The game was on. If you're enjoying this deep dive into my revenge, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I've got more receipts to tape together, and some of them are even worse than this one. Like this video if you made it to the end, and drop a comment. Tell me the craziest lie you've ever been told. I read every single one. The folder was getting thick. I stood in the center of the home office. The air smelled like ozone and dust. The shredder was finally silent. But the floor was a disaster. The Persian rug was buried under strips of white paper. It looked like a snow globe had exploded. The composition was all wrong. I couldn't leave it like this. Thurm might come home early. I grabbed a heavy black trash bag from the pantry. I knelt on the floor. My knees popped. I started gathering the evidence, strip by strip, receipt by receipt. I scooped up the remains of his lies. My hands moved fast. I was shaking. I tied the bag in a double knot. I carried it down to the garage. I buried it deep in the recycling bin. It was hidden. I got back into the car. The garage was dark. I hit the button for the door. It groaned open. I backed out into the sunlight. I needed to clear my head. I turned left onto Hudson Street. I wasn't going back to work. I was going downtown. Do you ever just get a feeling? A nagging thought that won't go away? I remembered the safe deposit box. We opened it right after we got married. Theron insisted on it. He said it was for deeds and wills. But he never mentioned it again. Not once in 8 years. I drove faster. I hit the West Side Highway. The traffic was crawling. It gave me too much time to think. Was I being paranoid? Maybe. But paranoid women stay alive. I parked on Varick Street. The meter had 10 minutes left. I ran inside the bank. It was freezing. The AC was always blasting in there. I walked up to the marble counter. The teller asked for my ID. I gave it to her. She didn't even blink. She asked for the key. I pulled it off my ring. It was a small brass key. I had forgotten I had it. She called the guard. He was an older man. He led me to the vault room. The walls were gray steel. It was claustrophobic. He opened the gate for me. I walked to box 404. It was waist high. I slid my key in. It turned with a heavy click. The guard handed me the box. He walked away to give me privacy. I sat on the small wooden stool. I lifted the lid. The box was mostly empty, just one item, a black moleskin notebook. It was leather bound. It looked expensive. I opened it. The first page made me stop. The handwriting was Theron's, but it was messy, frantic. He never writes messy. He's always so precise. The date was from 3 years ago. It was a list of words. 12 words. I flipped the page. Another list. And another. Seed phrases. Dozens of them. He had been hoarding crypto. He told me Bitcoin was a scam. He told me it was for criminals. He lied to my face. He sat at our dinner table and lied. I pulled out my phone. My hands were sweating. I wiped them on my skirt. I opened the App Store. I downloaded a wallet app. It took seconds to install. I typed in the first words. My finger hovered over the enter key. Did I feel guilty? No. I felt a dark, cold satisfaction. I pressed enter. The app synced. A number appeared on the screen. 12.48 Bitcoin. I checked the current price. My heart stopped. It was worth $512,000. $500,000. Hidden from me. Hidden from the IRS. Hidden from everyone. He was building an escape hatch. I looked at the door. The guard was still there. I didn't care. I went to the transfer screen. I typed in my new account address. The one Langston Kingsley set up. The untraceable one. I typed in the amount. 12.48. I was shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. This was irreversible. Once I hit send, it was gone. I thought about Callista. I thought about the hotel. I thought about the necklace. I hit send. A confirmation box popped up. Are you sure? Yes, I was sure. The screen spun. Processing. It felt like an hour. Then transfer complete. The balance was 0. It was done. I took a screenshot. I saved it to the encrypted cloud. I put the notebook back in the box. I closed the lid. I locked it. I walked out of the vault. The guard nodded at me. I walked out into the heat. The city noise was overwhelming. Car horns, sirens, people talking. I felt like I was in a bubble. I got in my car. I looked at the balance on my screen. I just stole $500,000 from my husband, and it felt better than any promotion I'd ever gotten. I want to know what you would have done. Would you have left it, or would you have taken it all? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. I had over $500,000 of his money sitting in a digital wallet, but I couldn't go home yet. My hands were still shaking from the adrenaline. I drove north on the West Side Highway. The city skyline looked like a glitching circuit board. I needed to disappear into a crowd. I ended up in Times Square. It was Wednesday afternoon. The tourists were thick, clogging the sidewalks like plaque. I parked the car in a garage on 40th. I walked into the massive Sephora store. The air inside smelled like vanilla and chemicals. It was chaotic and loud. It was perfect. I was just wandering the aisles, touching textures, looking at colors, trying to feel human again. Then I turned the corner near the high-end fragrances, and I froze. My heart skipped a beat. There she was, Callista. She was standing in front of the LeBeau display. She looked so young. She was holding the black bottle, Santal 33. My scent. The one I've worn every day for 6 years. Have you ever had a moment where the universe aligns just to mock you? I watched her spray it on her wrist. She closed her eyes. She looked blissfully happy. I knew that look. I had worn that look. It was the look of a woman who thinks she's the main character. She turned around and saw me. She didn't flinch. She didn't look guilty. She just smiled politely. She said, "I'm sorry. Can I ask you a question? Is the scent too strong? I'm buying it for a special occasion." I looked at her hand. No ring, but she was buying perfume for a special occasion. I smoothed my skirt. I kept my voice level. I said, "It's woodsy. It's very distinct. You either love it or you hate it." She laughed. A light, airy sound. She said, "That's exactly what he said." He said it's bold, like me. He, the man who was currently bankrupt, the man I had just robbed blind. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. Not anger, pity. She was reciting lines from a script I wrote years ago. I said, "If he picked it out for you, you should trust him. He clearly pays attention." She beamed. She placed the bottle on the counter. $350. The receipt printed out with a loud whirring sound. She paid. She walked out with a little white bag. She thought she was winning. I waited until she was gone. Then I walked out onto the street. The cold air felt good. I pulled out my phone. My hands were steady now. I opened Instagram. I typed in her name. Her profile popped up. I tapped her story. There was the bottle. The caption was glowing in white text. It said, "He has the best taste. Anniversary gift number 1." I stared at the screen. Anniversary? Next week is our 8th anniversary. Was he planning 2 celebrations? She thinks he loves her. I almost felt bad for her. But she's a casualty of war, and I'm the one holding the nukes. If you're enjoying this breakdown, hit that like button. It lets me know you're watching. Subscribe if you want to see how I handle this anniversary. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next upload. Drop a comment below. Tell me, would you have told her the truth? I read every single one. We were sitting at Buvette in the West Village. The candles were flickering on the white tablecloth. Theron was sweating, just a little, right above his collar. He was nervous. He kept reaching into his jacket pocket, touching his phone. I knew what he was doing. He was planning to tell me about the trip, the surprise Napa getaway for our anniversary. He probably had the whole evening choreographed in his head, but the lighting was wrong, and the timing was terrible. The waiter came over with the black leather folder. He placed it gently next to the water glasses. Theron didn't even look at the total. He just grabbed his Amex and slid it inside. He wanted to look like the provider. The big shot. I watched his hand. It was trembling. The waiter came back 30 seconds later. He looked uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, sir, it was declined." The word hung in the air like smoke. Theron laughed. It was a tight, high-pitched sound. "That's strange," he said. "Try it again." The waiter walked away. Theron's face was turning red, a deep, ugly crimson. If you've ever watched someone panic in public, you know the look. It's pathetic. He pulled out his phone. His fingers flew across the screen. He was checking the banking app. "It says insufficient funds," he whispered. "That's impossible." I took a sip of my Sancerre. It was cold, crisp. "Everything okay?" I asked. My voice was flat. "System glitch," he said. But his eyes were darting around the room. The waiter returned. He shook his head again. Theron tried the debit card next, the one linked to his crypto wallet. I felt a cold rush of adrenaline. The composition was finally shifting. "Declined," the waiter said. He was starting to look annoyed. Theron stared at the screen. He looked like a man who had seen a ghost. He turned to me. His eyes were wide. "Did you move money today?" he asked. "The joint account is empty." I didn't blink. I just looked at him. "Fraud alert, babe," I said smoothly. "I saw a notification from Chase this morning. They froze the accounts." "But I need to pay for this," he hissed. "And the hotel booking." "I got it," I said. I placed my black corporate card on the table. The waiter grabbed it like a lifeline. I watched Theron's face. He was confused, scared, but he wasn't calling me a liar. Not yet. We walked home in silence. The West Village streets were dark. As soon as he went to the bathroom, I opened my laptop. I pulled up the living room camera feed from earlier. I scrolled back to 6:45 p.m. There he was, pacing in front of the fireplace. He was holding his phone, screaming at the screen. He wasn't just angry about dinner. He was checking the crypto wallet. He knew the money was gone. He was trying to figure out how. And honestly, I want to know what you would have done, because he's suspicious now. I have 2 weeks left before our anniversary. I have to move the rest of the money now. I watched him scream at his phone until the screen went black. The fraud alert lie was a temporary fix. It wouldn't hold until morning. I looked at the clock on the wall. 2:15 a.m. The window was closing. I was sitting in the home office. The door was locked. My laptop screen glowed in the dark. The blue light washed over my face. It made me look like a ghost in the reflection. The air in the room was cold. The radiator was hissing in the corner. I poured a glass of scotch from the crystal decanter. It burned going down. A warm fire in a cold room. The cursor blinked. It was a steady heartbeat. I logged in with his credentials. The ones I saved months ago when he made me check his 401k. The Charles Schwab interface was stark white. It felt clinical, sterile. I hovered over the sell all button. My hand didn't shake. That surprised me. I thought I would tremble. Did I feel a pang of guilt? No, I felt balance. I was just adjusting the lighting of our shared life, removing the shadows where he hid his lies. I looked at the portfolio: tech stocks, bonds, mutual funds. A chaotic composition. No harmony, no flow. I started selling. Click, click, click. It was surprisingly easy. Too easy. Apple, Amazon, Tesla, I sold them all. Market orders, immediate execution. The green numbers turned red. It was beautiful destruction. Like watching a building implode in slow motion. I thought about the Napa trip. He's planning to take her there next week. I wonder if he realizes he'll be paying for it with a maxed out credit card. The irony is delicious. You might be wondering, what about the mortgage? I left exactly one payment just to keep the lights on for a few more days. I'm not a monster. I'm an artist. My fingers were freezing on the keys. The keyboard felt like ice. I kept typing. I had to finish before he woke up. If he caught me now, it was over. The total value was $400,000. Exactly. I initiated the transfer to the Cayman account. The confirmation number popped up on the screen. TX98 Malifa. A random string of numbers. I checked the time. 3:04 a.m. The transfer was pending. I watched the loading bar inch across the screen. It was agonizingly slow. A pixelated snail. The radiator hissed again, a rhythmic sound like a countdown. I took another sip of scotch. The heavy crystal clanged against the mahogany desk. Too loud. I held my breath. I looked at the photo on the desk. Us in Paris. 5 years ago. We looked happy. He looked honest. I wanted to smash the glass frame. I didn't. I just turned it face down. The wood underneath was scratched. I traced the scratch with my fingernail. A small jagged line. It felt like a scar. A physical wound in the finish. I thought about Langston. He's gonna love this. He told me to hit him where it hurts. The wallet is the sweet spot. It's where men live. Theron values himself by his net worth. It's his only metric. I just deleted it. I didn't just take his money. I erased his identity. He is nobody now. I scrolled down to the footer. The legal jargon was tiny. I clicked, I agree. It felt like signing a death warrant. A digital signature. The mouse button clicked. A hollow plastic sound. That was the sound of our marriage ending. Not a scream, not a door slam, just a click. Then I heard a floorboard creak in the hallway. I froze. The breath stopped in my throat. My eyes snapped to the door handle. It turned. He didn't come in. He just stood there, listening. I heard him sigh. A heavy, tired sound. Then his footsteps faded back to the bedroom. He was sleepwalking. I exhaled. My heart was hammering against my ribs, like a trapped bird. I refreshed the screen. The balance was $0. A beautiful round number. The loading bar vanished. Transfer complete. The words glowed in the dark. $400,000. Gone in 3 minutes. 8 years of work. Gone. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to bankrupt someone in their sleep? It's quiet. It's terrifyingly quiet. You expect a sound. A crash. There's nothing. I closed the laptop. The room was pitch black. I just ruined him financially. And the best part? He doesn't even know yet. He thinks he's safe. The accounts are empty. The house is the only thing left. And I'm about to sign that over to a ghost. A company that doesn't exist. Before I tell you what happens when he wakes up to an empty bank account, I want you to guess. Do you think he'll cry, or will he get angry? Tell me in the comments. Did I sleep? No. I sat in the kitchen watching the sun rise over the West Village. The sky turned that bruised purple color right before the light hits. My coffee cup was empty. The ceramic was still cold. At 7:30 a.m. my phone chimed. It was an email notification. The subject line read, "Our night." I stared at the screen. The preview text showed a reservation for Lartusi, table 9, 8 p.m. And then I saw the body text. I have a big announcement to make. Wear the red dress. A big announcement. You know that feeling where you get a chill that starts at your ankles and goes all the way up to your hairline? That was me. I knew what this was. He knows. The fraud alert lie didn't work. He called Chase this morning. He knows I took everything. He's not asking for a divorce. He's gonna do it in public. He wants to humiliate me. He wants to make a scene at the trendiest spot in the village. Surrounded by people, cameras, witnesses, he thinks he's the predator in this scenario. He thinks I'm the wounded prey waiting for the final blow. I stood up from the kitchen island. My legs felt steady, stronger than they had in months. I walked into the bedroom. Theron was still asleep. He was snoring, mouth slightly open. He looked peaceful. Stupid. I walked to my closet. I pushed past the gray suits and the black sheaves. My hand found the back of the wardrobe. There it was, the red dress. The one I haven't worn since our honeymoon in Paris. It's bold, unapologetic, dangerous. I took it off the hanger. The silk whispered against my fingers. I laid it out on the bed, right next to his sleeping head. Then I opened my nightstand. I reached into the very back, behind the vitamin bottles. My fingers brushed cold leather, Langston Kingsley's envelope. Inside were the documents, the divorce papers, signed, sealed, notarized, and ready to serve. I opened my clutch bag on the dresser. I tucked the envelope inside, right next to my lipstick. I thought about Callista. I thought about the Bitcoin. I thought about the empty bank accounts. He wants to make a scene? Fine, I'll bring the props. I looked in the mirror. My eyes were dry. My makeup was perfect. The composition was finally right. I closed the front door quietly. Theron was still in the shower. I could hear the water running through the wood. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button. The metal doors slid shut. I felt the USB drive in my pocket. It was a tiny piece of plastic, but it held the weight of a nuclear bomb. I walked out onto West Street. The morning air was biting. I hailed a cab to Grand Central. The city was waking up. Gray buildings looming over the avenues. I checked my phone. 7:45 a.m. I had plenty of time. The cab dropped me off at 42nd Street. I walked into the terminal. The ceiling arched high above me. Constellations of gold leaf painted on teal. It was beautiful, but I wasn't there to sightsee. I went to the Apple store downstairs. It was a glass box underground. The light inside was stark, clinical white. I walked to the back wall. I found an open MacBook. The screen was black. I tapped the spacebar. It lit up. I looked around. No one was watching. Just a few tourists checking their email. I opened Safari. I navigated to the Tor browser. I wasn't taking any chances. I opened a fresh email draft. The address field waited for me. I typed tips@fbi.gov and ICC whistleblower line. I wanted to make sure the net was wide. Then I inserted the drive. The icon popped up on the desktop. I dragged the file onto the email. Theron, tfbezelment.pdf. It was 20 megabytes of ruin. I want you to understand what I was sending. It wasn't just bank statements. It was the reconstructed ledger from the basement. I had taped every shred back together. Page 1 showed the wire transfer to the SoHo Hotel, $4,000 for a business retreat. It was a lie. Page 2 was the Cartier receipt. $15,000 charged to the agency Amex for a necklace I never saw. Page 3 was the killer, the crypto transfers. He moved client funds into his private wallet, and he used that money to book the Napa trip. It was a paper trail of ironclad evidence. Every number was a nail in his coffin. I hovered the mouse over the attachment. I double-clicked it just to be sure. The file opened. I saw the scans of the handwritten notes. His handwriting. Frantic. Messy. Move the $500K. Don't let the auditors see. There it was, in his own hand. Proof of intent to defraud. I closed the preview. I looked at the send button. It was blue. So innocent looking, just a square on a screen. Have you ever felt the power of total destruction? It's intoxicating. I didn't hesitate. I clicked the trackpad. The screen showed a spinning wheel. Sending. Sent. The message disappeared into the ether. It was gone, irreversible. I pulled the USB drive out. I put it back in my pocket. Then I wiped the browser history. I cleared the cache. I stood up. The chair made a scraping sound on the floor. A salesman looked at me. I smiled at him. He smiled back. He had no idea he just watched an execution. I walked out of the store. I walked up the ramp to the main concourse. The noise of a station hit me. Tell me in the comments, was I wrong to send that email before dinner? Or was it exactly what he deserved? I want to know what you would have done, because honestly, I didn't feel guilty. I felt relief. I walked home. I needed the time to think. I walked up Park Avenue. The sun was getting higher. I watched the city going to work. People were rushing, drinking coffee, living their normal lives. I envied them. But this was the path I chose. I got back to the apartment at noon. Theron was gone. He had left a note on the counter. See you tonight. Big night. Wear the red dress. I laughed. He wanted me to wear red. Like he wanted me to wear a target on my back. Fine. I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. I spent the afternoon in the salon. I got my blowout, my nails done. A sharp, dangerous red. By 7 p.m., I was back in the bedroom. The dress was hanging on the door. It was silk. It clung to every curve. I put it on. The fabric was cool against my skin. I looked in the full-length mirror. I smoothed the fabric over my hips. I checked my makeup. The eyeliner was sharp. Wing-tipped. Precise. I looked like a queen. A queen about to behead her king. I picked up the black clutch. I opened it. The divorce papers were folded inside. Langston's work, signed and dated. I clicked the clutch shut. I looked at the clock. 7:55 p.m. Theron would be waiting. He would be smiling. He would be ordering champagne. He thinks he won. He thinks the fraud alert was the worst of it. He thinks he's gonna announce a new beginning. He has no idea. The beginning is actually the end. And I'm the one writing the final scene. I took one last look in the mirror. The composition was perfect. High contrast. Deep shadows. I picked up my coat. I walked to the door. Divorce is just a financial transaction. Prison? That's justice. I grabbed my coat. It was time to celebrate. The Uber pulled up to the curb on West 10th Street. It was exactly 8 p.m. I stepped out onto the cobblestones. The red silk of my dress caught the streetlight. It was the exact shade of arterial blood. And honestly, it felt appropriate. I handed the driver a 20 through the window. I didn't wait for the change. I just walked toward the heavy glass doors of L'Artusi. The maître smiled at me. He knew my face. We were here every year. He led me to the back, table 9. Theron was already waiting. He stood up when he saw me. He smoothed his tie. It was a navy blue silk tie. He looked like a man who had just won the lottery. I wanted to laugh. Instead, I just sat down. The chair was velvet beneath my thighs. I placed my clutch on the white tablecloth. Inside that small leather pouch was Langston Kingsley's envelope. Signed divorce papers. A nuclear bomb hidden in plain sight. Theron's eyes scanned me from head to toe. He smiled. That fake practice smile that used to make me melt. Now it just looked like bad acting. You look incredible, he said. The red, it's bold. Bold. The exact same word he used with Callista. I wonder if he rehearsed that line in the mirror. I just nodded. I didn't trust my voice yet. Theron picked up the wine list. He didn't even look at the prices. He ordered a bottle of Barolo, $400. He still had no idea. His credit card was already maxed out. Or worse, declined. He poured the wine with a steady hand. The red liquid swirled in the glass. It looked so dark against the white table. I've been doing a lot of thinking, he said. His voice was low, serious. He thought he was being profound. I took a sip of water. The glass was cold against my lips. I waited for the punchline. We've grown apart, he continued. You have your world. I have mine. He reached across the table. His hand covered mine. It was warm, but I felt the chill crawl up my spine. I wanted to pull away. I wanted to scream. Instead, I let him touch me. I let him think he still had access to me. You know that feeling when you watch someone walk off a cliff and they think they're flying? That was him. He thought he was the protagonist of this tragedy. He didn't know he was the villain. I need a fresh start, he said. There's a project in Napa. It requires my full attention. There it was. The Napa project. The lie he built his second life on. He looked at me with pity. Like I was the child being left behind. It's not you, XCO, he said softly. It's just... the composition of our lives doesn't work anymore. Composition. He was using my words against me. The waiter arrived with the appetizers. Roasted beets. Burrata cheese. Theron didn't touch his food. He was too busy performing his breakup scene. He picked up his napkin. He wiped his mouth. I think you should stay at the apartment tonight, he said. I'll get a hotel. He thought he was free. He thought he was walking out the door with his money and his mistress. He didn't know I had drained the accounts. He didn't know the FBI was probably downloading his file at that exact moment. Have you ever sat across from someone who is lying to your face and they think they are being so noble? It's fascinating. It's terrifying. I felt the weight of the envelope in my clutch. It was heavy. It was the only thing keeping me grounded. I thought about the crypto transfer. 1248 Bitcoin. Gone. I thought about the text message I sent to the federal tip line. Sent. Delivered. Did I feel guilty? No. I felt like an artist putting the final stroke on a canvas. The lighting was finally perfect. You understand, don't you? He asked. His eyes were searching mine. For what? Forgiveness? Permission? I looked at the Rolex on his wrist. A watch I bought him for our 5th anniversary. A watch bought with money I earned. I understand, I said. My voice was steady, cold. He looked at me with such pity. Like I was the one who was about to be destroyed. I smiled and took a sip of my wine. The waiter walked toward our table. He was holding that small black leather folder. Theron didn't hesitate. He reached for his jacket on the back of the chair. I watched his hand slide into the pocket. He pulled out the Hermes wallet. It was the one I bought him in Paris 3 years ago. He looked at me with that pitying smile, like he was doing me a favor by letting me go. He opened the wallet and pulled out the Amex. The heavy metal one. He handed it to the waiter. Casual, dismissive. The waiter took the card and walked away toward the bar. I took a slow sip of my Barolo. The tension was beautiful. Have you ever watched a car crash in slow motion? It is absolutely mesmerizing. The waiter came back. His face was neutral, professional. He leaned in slightly. He said, I'm sorry, sir. The card was declined. Theron laughed. A short, sharp sound. That's impossible, he said. Run it again. The waiter swiped the card again. He tapped the screen. He shook his head. Declined again, sir. Do you have another method of payment? The waiter stood there. He waited. Theron's eyes darted around the room. Someone at the next table looked over. Theron pulled at his navy blue silk tie. I saw the bead of sweat. It formed on Theron's temple, right under the warm pendant lights. He fumbled with the wallet. His fingers were clumsy now. He grabbed the chased sapphire. Here, he said. This one works. It's the business account. The waiter took that one too. He walked away again. I checked my phone under the table. Langston had texted one word, frozen. The waiter returned. This time he didn't offer the card back. He held it awkwardly. I'm sorry, sir, he said. This one is also being declined. The noise of the restaurant suddenly felt very loud. Clinking silverware. Laughter from the next table. Theron's face turned gray, a shade not found in nature. He looked at the wallet, then at me. Panic was setting in. I want you to guess how much I enjoyed this moment. It was exquisite. I reached into my clutch. My fingers brushed the envelope from Langston. I pulled out the matte black card, the one from FD4T Private Holdings. I handed it to the waiter. Put it on mine, I said, please. The waiter took it and disappeared. Theron just stared at me. The composition was finely balanced. The lighting was perfect. The waiter returned with the receipt. He placed the folder on the table. I signed the receipt. Total, $850. I left the tip line blank, $0. Just a harsh straight line. I closed the folder with a snap. The sound echoed between us. He turned pale. Ixiomara, what's going on? I picked up my clutch. Theron, there's something you need to see. If the story is hitting different for you, hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the end. Drop a like if you made it to the check. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done? I read every single one. The cold air hit my face on West Street. I didn't feel it. My blood was too hot for that. Theron stumbled out of Lortusi behind me. He was clutching that black leather folder like a shield. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. We stood on the crowded sidewalk outside the restaurant. The city noise was deafening, taxis honking, people laughing. It felt obscene. Theron's navy blue tie was loose. His forehead was covered in sweat. He looked pale. Sick. Like a bad reproduction of the man he used to be. A man in a gray wool coat stepped forward. He moved with absolute precision. He didn't look at me. His eyes were locked on Theron. "Mr. Villanueva?" the man asked. His voice was flat, no emotion, just business. He held out a thick manila envelope. Theron reached for it automatically. Habit! His hand was shaking violently. He opened the flap. Papers. Divorce summons. I saw the bold type at the top. Grounds, adultery, and dissipation of assets. I recognized the font. Times New Roman. 12 point. Beautiful. Then the second man moved. He was taller. Broad shoulders in a dark suit. He flipped open a leather wallet. A gold badge glinted under the street lamp. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Theron froze. His mouth opened. No sound came out. The color drained from his face completely. He looked at the badge. Then he looked at me. "Xiomara," he whispered. "What is this?" "Theron Villanueva," the agent said. "You're under arrest for wire fraud and embezzlement." The agent grabbed Theron's wrist, twisted it behind his back. The click of the handcuffs was loud, sharp, final. A mechanical sound ending a life. The hostess stood in the doorway of the restaurant. She was watching. She didn't come outside. She just stared at Theron. He was screaming now. A high, ugly sound. It ruined the ambiance of the West Village. Passers-by stopped on the sidewalk. Phones came out. Flash bulbs popped like strobe lights. They thought it was a movie. They didn't know it was justice. It was a study in contrast, his chaos against my calm. The framing was finally perfect. I adjusted my clutch on my shoulder. The leather felt cool against my palm. Theron was trying to reach me. The agent held him back. "Call Langston," he screamed. "Xiomara, fix this." He was sweating through his shirt. He looked pathetic, small, just a man in a ruined suit. A yellow taxi pulled up to the curb. The driver honked. I opened the back door. Smooth, fluid motion. I slid onto the cracked leather seat. The smell of old air freshener filled my nose. I looked at him one last time. He was begging. He was crying. It wasn't a pretty look. "You can't reach me," I said, stepping into the waiting cab. "I've moved on." Literally. I know what you're thinking. Was it too much? Did I go too far? Tell me in the comments, would you have stayed to watch him get cuffed or would you have left? I want to know. I didn't go home. Home wasn't mine anymore. I had the cab drop me off in Brooklyn Heights. It was close to midnight. The brownstone I'm staying in is a sublet. Temporary. Just like my marriage, I paid the driver and walked up the stoop. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I thought I'd be shaking. I wasn't. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air smelled like lemon polish and dust. It was clean, empty, perfect. I dropped my clutch on the entry table. Thud. The sound echoed in the silent hall. I walked into the living room. There were boxes everywhere. I haven't unpacked. Why would I? I'm just visiting this life until the next one starts. I sat on the floor. My phone buzzed on the hardwood. Once, twice, then it vibrated continuously against the floorboards. Like a heartbeat I didn't want anymore. I picked it up. The screen lit up my face in the dark room. Dozens of notifications. Instagram tags. Twitter mentions. Texts from people I hadn't spoken to in years. And the news alerts. They were coming in fast. Breaking news, NYC execute. Arrested for embezzlement. SoHo CFO in custody. I clicked the first link. The New York Post page loaded slowly. Then the image appeared. Theron. He was walking out of the precinct in handcuffs. The headline read, "CFO busted for fraud and affair." The photo was grainy. A flash from a camera had caught him mid-shout. His mouth was open. Screaming? Denying? It didn't matter. He looked smaller, weaker. The genius of the finance world looked like a common criminal. I zoomed in on the photo. His tie was crooked. That navy blue silk tie I bought him for Paris, it was undone, hanging loosely around his neck. He looked disheveled. He looked pathetic. I felt a strange sensation in my chest, not happiness. It wasn't joy to see him destroyed. It was just lightness. Like I'd been carrying a marble statue in my purse for 8 years. And suddenly I put it down. Did I feel guilty? No. I felt efficient. I scrolled down to the text of the article. They mentioned the anonymous tip that led the FBI to the evidence. They mentioned the complex web of offshore accounts he used to steal from his own clients. $5 million. That was the number. He stole $5 million from his clients, and he played me for a fool over a $200 dinner bill. The contrast was almost funny. You know that feeling when you realize the monster under the bed was just a pile of dirty socks? It was like that. Theron wasn't a mastermind. He wasn't a chess player. He was just a messy man who couldn't balance a checkbook. I looked at the boxes stacked against the wall. This apartment has a view of the bridge. I could see the lights flickering across the water through the window. I stood up and walked over to it. The glass was cold against my forehead. Theron was sitting in a jail cell right now, probably wondering what happened, probably thinking I had something to do with it. He wouldn't be wrong. I turned away from the window. The room felt huge, spacious. Claustrophobia was gone. The tension in my shoulders, which I had carried for months, finally released. I rolled my neck. Crack. The sound was sharp and satisfying. I picked up the remote and turned on the small TV on the counter. CNN was already covering it. Prominent New York financier, the anchor said, facing up to 20 years in federal prison. 20 years. I did the math in my head. He'll be 60 before he sees freedom again. By then I'll have built an empire he couldn't even dream of. I turned off the TV. Click. Silence rushed back in. It was peaceful. I walked to the kitchenette. I poured a glass of water from a plastic pitcher. The water was cold. I drank it in one gulp. I sat back down on the floor. The phone buzzed again. A text from Callista. Ixiomara, do you know where Theron is? He's not answering. I stared at the screen. Did she know? Had she seen the news? Or was she still waiting for her Napa trip? I didn't reply. I blocked the number. Block. Gone. Just like that. You have to be ruthless with composition. You crop out the elements that ruin the image. She was clutter. Theron was clutter. I was the clean line running through the middle. I looked at the time. It was 1 a.m. The city was still awake. Horns honked in the distance. Sirens wailed. But inside this room, it was dead quiet. I felt tired. A deep, bone-heavy exhaustion. But it was a good tired. The kind you feel after a long workout. I lay back on the rug. The ceiling fan spun slowly above me, round and round. I watched the blades slice through the shadows. I thought about the audit. The one he was so desperate to hide. He thought he could erase the past. He thought shredding paper would make the debt go away. But data leaves a footprint, especially when someone is looking for it. I found everything. The offshore accounts in the Caymans, the shell companies in Delaware, the payments to Callista disguised as consulting fees. It was all there in the black notebook. The one he thought was just a diary. It was a confession, and I mailed it straight to the Department of Justice. Certified mail. It wasn't just a divorce anymore, it was a correction. A necessary adjustment to the universe's balance sheet. I closed my eyes. I could see the headlines fading behind my eyelids. CFO busted. Affair exposed. The fall of Villanueva. The narrative was written. He was the villain. I was the victim who survived. That's the story they'll sell. But we know the truth, don't we? I wasn't the victim. I was the architect. I picked up my phone one last time. I opened the banking app. My new account. The one in my name only. The balance was significant. But it wasn't about the money. It never really was. It was about the control. He thought he controlled the story. He thought he was the director. But he was just an actor who forgot his lines. I put the phone down. The screen went black. My reflection stared back at me. Calm, cold, complete. The 4-month war was over, and I had won. Not by playing his game, but by changing the board entirely. If you're watching this wondering if you should stay or go, leave. Take everything. Burn it down if you have to. But don't just leave empty-handed. They called him a genius in business. Turns out he just didn't know who was actually keeping the books. The sun was hitting the brownstones on Friday morning. It was blinding. I slipped my sunglasses on. The West Village felt different. It felt like my city again. I walked up to our building. The doorman, Marcus, didn't even look up from his phone. He knew. Everyone knew. I didn't care. I walked past him like I owned the sidewalk. 4 flights of stairs. No elevator. My heart rate was up, but I wasn't winded. I was buzzing. I unlocked the front door. The key felt greasy in my hand, like it had been in someone else's pocket. The apartment was freezing. Theron always kept the AC at 68 degrees, even in winter. It was a control thing. The The air was stale. It smelled like expensive cologne and dirty laundry. It was the distinct smell of betrayal. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and it just feels wrong? Like the furniture is plotting against you. I dropped my duffel bag in the hallway. The lock was already being changed. I hired a guy from Brooklyn. He didn't ask questions. He just drilled. The sound was violent, screeching metal against the deadbolt. Shavings fell on the floor. They looked like gold dust. I walked into the living room. The morning light was hitting the gallery wall. The wall of us. That is what Theron called it. I hated that wall. I looked at the first photo. Paris, 2019. We were on the balcony. I was wearing that red coat. He was holding a glass of champagne. In the photo, his hand is on my waist. I remember him squeezing it too hard. I thought it was passion. It was possession. I took it down. The wire was twisted tight. I used my fingernails to untangle it. Next to it was the Hamptons photo. Labor Day. We looked like a catalog. Perfect teeth, perfect tans. It was all curated. I ripped that one down too. The glass rattled in the frame. I touched the wall where the photos had been. The paint was brighter there, protected from the sun. It looked like a scar, a mark where something used to be. I closed my eyes for a second. Suddenly, I was back in 2017, the day we moved in. The walls were gray and dingy. We were painting them decorator white. I was standing on a ladder. Theron was on the floor, mixing the paint. He had a splatter of white paint on his nose. He looked up at me and smiled. A real smile. He said, "This is it, Shomara. This is the start of our empire." I remember feeling so safe, like I had found my anchor. But anchors don't just hold you down. They drown you. I opened my eyes. The memory dissolved. I cleared the rest of the wall. 5 photos. 10 years of lies. All stacked in a pile on the floor. The drill stopped. The silence was louder than the noise had been. The locksmith wiped his hands on a rag. It was stained with grease. "Here," he said. He held out 3 new keys. Brass. Shiny, unmarked. I took them. The metal bit into my palm. "Cash okay?" I asked him. He nodded. "Cash is always okay." I went to the kitchen. I opened the junk drawer. There it was. The envelope marked, "Emergency, $5,000 in hundreds." I took it out. It felt thick. "Good." I walked back and handed it to him. "Keep the change." His eyes went wide. He didn't say thanks. He just left. I stood alone in the apartment. It was just a box now. Wood and plaster. I walked to the entry table. It was a vintage marble piece I found at a flea market. I took the old key out of my pocket, the silver one. I laid it gently on the marble. It looked small, insignificant, just a piece of metal. I realized I wasn't leaving a marriage. I was leaving a prison I had decorated myself. I tell myself I don't feel guilty, and I don't. But I do feel lighter, like I cut off a limb that was already dead. If you've ever had to start over, you know it's terrifying. But it is also electric. I picked up my bag. I adjusted my coat. The composition was finally right. I walked to the door. The new lock gleamed in the sun. I stepped into the hallway. I pulled the door shut. Click. I locked the door behind me. I didn't look back. The past is a country I don't visit anymore. The silence in my new office is different. It's not heavy like the old place. It's a clean, white, negative space. I sit at my drafting table in Tribeca. The light hits the sketches just right. I'm redesigning a logo for a luxury tech startup. They want bold. They want fearless. I sketch a sharp line across the paper. I laugh because that's exactly who I am now. A Persian rug covers the floor. It's deep red, like the dress I wore to ruin him. My phone buzzes on the mahogany desk. It's just a calendar reminder. No panic, no dread, just a notification about a budget meeting. I swipe it away without thinking. The screen goes black. At 12:30, I take my lunch break. I walk down to the corner deli on Varick Street. The air smells like roasted coffee and city exhaust. I order a turkey and Swiss sandwich. I grab a table by the window. The glass is cool against my forehead. I pull up my phone. I open the banking app. My thumb hovers over the screen for a second. Then I tap it. The balance loads instantly. $3.4 million. The number is sharp. It's precise. The money sits in the Cayman account. Safe. Untouchable. Freedom costs a lot, but I paid in full. I sip my iced coffee. The condensation drips down the plastic cup. It feels real. You know that feeling when you finally exhale after holding your breath for 4 years? That's this. It's quiet power. I head back to the elevator bank. The doors slide open with a soft chime. I step inside. A man in a charcoal suit follows me. He stands on the opposite side. He presses the button for the lobby. He looks at me and smiles. It's a nice smile. Warm. Unassuming. He has kind eyes and a blue tie. I look at his reflection in the polished steel doors. I smile back. My lips curve up automatically, but my hand tightens around the strap of my bag. My knuckles turn white. I keep the bag between us. A physical barrier. It's a reflex now. Trust is a composition I haven't mastered yet. The elevator hums quietly as we descend. The numbers flicker downward. Floor 20, floor 10. Lobby. The doors slide open. I walk out first. My heels click against the marble floor. I don't look back. I'm not that woman anymore. The one who waited by the window. The one who wondered where he was. Thurn is probably in a federal cell right now. I hope the walls are gray. I hope the food is cold. I haven't checked the news in weeks. I don't need to. The past is a country I don't visit anymore. I am building my own empire now, one pixel at a time. I want to know, did you see the ending coming, or did you think I'd take him back? Tell me in the comments. I'm curious. If this story meant something to you, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. I have more stories to tell. Some of them are even darker than this one. Drop a like if you made it to the end. And please leave a comment. I read every single one. I survived the war. I won. But if you're listening and you think your partner is cheating, check the cloud sync. It tells you everything.